Hey guys, welcome to Bethel Young Adults Online. Welcome to our brand new series, Rhythms, Finding Rest for Our Souls. This 3-week series covers 3 essential pieces of our daily routine: work, rest, and worship. With our susceptibility to compartmentalize and overindulge, we as Christians should be diligent in finding a rhythm that God intended for us in our work, whether that's our schoolwork or on our job site, in our rest, and in our worship. There's no doubt about the importance of work, rest, and worship when it comes to our lifestyles and how each of those affect our daily lives. We must work to eat, rest to keep going, and worship to glorify God and to strengthen our relationship with Him. Yet striving to balance all of these pieces can sometimes feel overwhelming. The problem is that we have allowed our culture to influence how we work and when we rest and what we worship. But our culture should never be our standard. The Bible teaches us that when we aim to find rhythm in all 3, that we begin to make progress. There's no need to compartmentalize these aspects because each one of these can be essential to the other when we have a good rhythm. Worship can be a part of our work, and rest can be a form of worship. And God has a desire for us to fulfill each of these in a healthy manner. There's one aspect of our life that can often seem like a necessary frustration: work. Working allows us to eat and to pay the bills, to enjoy entertainment, and to invest in the things that we are passionate about. But it also causes us exhaustion and frustration and a lack of motivation at times, especially when we don't particularly like what we do. In 2 Thessalonians chapter 3, verses 6 through 15, the Apostle Paul addresses how we should work, and he advises us how to find a rhythm in our daily lives. In verse 6, he says, "In the name of the Lord Jesus Christ, we command you, brothers and sisters, to keep away from every believer who is idle and disruptive and does not live according to the teaching you received from us." Basically, Paul is saying that bad company corrupts good character. And he says you need to stay away from those kinds of people. Verse 7 says, "For you yourselves know how you ought to follow our example. We were not idle when we were with you, nor did we eat anyone's food without paying for it. On the contrary, we worked night and day, laboring and toiling, so that we would not be a burden to any of you." In verses 6 and 7, we see a stern and passionate command by Paul regarding idleness and not taking responsibility for working and earning your keep. And Paul stresses to stay clear of those people who are known for their laziness. Paul uses himself as a positive example here in verse 7, and he's explaining that he made sure to work and to keep from burdening others. Whenever we become a burden to people, it causes unnecessary strife and contention. Have you ever had a friend who maybe bummed off you quite often? Maybe it didn't bother you at first, but over time it really caused a friction in your relationship. That's what happens when we take advantage of others' hard work. It begins to cause a fracture in the relationship, and that's what Paul is really warning us about. It also leaves little room for the flourishing of important things in our own life, like the joy of service. Rest and relaxation are important aspects of our life, and they need to be incorporated into the rhythm of our week. However, Christians must also understand that hard work and diligence shows good stewardship of our gifts, time, and our responsibilities. Paul is really showing us here how important it is to set an example for others to follow. In verse 9, he says, "We did this not because we do not have the right to such help, but in order to offer ourselves as a model for you to imitate. For even when we were with you, we gave you this rule: this one who is unwilling to work shall not eat." That sounds pretty harsh, but what Paul is trying to teach us is that we have a responsibility to work. Work is an essential responsibility that brings honor to God. And here Paul is stressing the importance of working and handling our responsibilities. It can be difficult for some of us who toil and struggle and stress in the job description that we have, but Paul makes it clear that it's in our makeup to work hard and to earn our keep. And this isn't to say that we can't accept help or even to extend help, but it really is to help us see what kind of hearts that we should have toward working for a living. If we go to work every day with the mindset of worshiping God in our duties, then it will help us to begin the rhythm of bringing both together. Paul is teaching us that our work does not have to be separate from our worship, which imitates what he said in Colossians chapter 3, verses 23 through 24. He says, "Whatever you do, work at it with all your heart, as you are working for the Lord, not human masters, since you know that you will receive an inheritance from the Lord as a reward. It is the Lord Christ you are serving." And lastly, Paul wants us to know that work does not mean resting less. In verse 11 he says, "We hear that some among you are idle and disruptive. They are not busy, they are busybodies. Such people we command and urge in the Lord Jesus Christ to settle down and earn the food they eat. And as for you, brothers and sisters, never tire of doing what is good. Take special note of anyone who does not obey our instruction in this letter. Do not associate with them in order that they may feel ashamed. Yet do not regard them as an enemy, but warn them as you would a fellow believer." Sometimes we believe that we are busy doing good work in our workplace, yet we actually may be being busybodies, as Paul said in verse 11. As a culture, we have gotten used to chaos. And sometimes we feel like doing a lot of random things means that we're being really productive. Yet we may actually not be getting a lot done. This in turn doesn't help at all with our rhythm in our work. Working for the sake of busyness is never a good answer. There is no reason for us to overextend ourselves and to skip out on the Sabbath time in order to appease the ideas of our culture. We must continue to see rest as a form of normalcy. In the same manner, we must not set aside all of our responsibilities and do not work at all. This is when we become possible burdens to those around us, like the people of Thessalonica. And even though work is important, it should never be such a priority that we are willing to neglect our time with God, our time to rest, and our time with family and friends. It takes balance, but God really wants to help us find rhythm. To be honest, I've really struggled in the area of rest. And I've learned that if I do not take time to rest, I often become burnt out. And when I'm burnt out, I'm no good at my work, and I'm no good for my friends or my family. For me, Sundays are so busy, and I've learned to take a different day to rest. So if your Sundays are like mine, then find a different day to rest. We all need our Sabbath, and I really have noticed that when I take my Friday off just to rest and to recoup, that means no housework or schoolwork or even work. And at times that can be really difficult and hard, but when I take time to find rest, I'm able to be much more productive in the following week. And listen, if God rested on the seventh day, that means that we need to rest too. And so I want to encourage you, work hard. Work with the heart and the attitude that you are working for God. And remember to take time to rest. Thank you for joining us. We'll see you next week.